The wind howled across the frozen expanse of the northern planet, turning the already bleak landscape into a swirling mass of white. Snow fell in thick sheets, obscuring anything more than a few feet ahead. Captain Arya Venn adjusted the collar of her insulated jacket and squinted through the icy storm. Every gust of wind cut through her layers like a blade, making her wish she had never agreed to this last-minute mission. Her mission had seemed simple at first: deliver vital supplies to the remote outpost at Tarsus Base. But simplicity was a luxury she hadn't realized she'd lost the moment the navigation system failed. Now her hovercraft was stuck, buried halfway in a drift, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. She cursed under her breath, testing the controls again. The console blinked erratically, sparks flying for a moment before dying down. Nothing worked. She leaned back, running a hand through her frost-covered hair. Alone, or so she thought. A faint, muffled sound came from behind the vehicle. At first, she assumed it was the wind, but then a voice called out, strained and urgent. "Hello? Anyone there?" Arya's heart leapt. Another human. Relief coursed through her body, warming her just slightly against the cold. She grabbed her thermal torch and turned toward the voice, waving the faint glow in the storm. "Over here!" she shouted, trying to make herself visible. The figure emerged slowly from the blizzard. At first, Arya could see only a silhouette, bundled in layers against the cold. As the figure drew closer, she recognized the woman, Commander Lyra Soren, a veteran engineer at the outpost, someone she had met only briefly before. Lyra's face was pale from the cold, but her eyes shone with determination. "Captain Venn?" Lyra called out, struggling to keep her footing. "The hovercraft? Is it stuck?" Arya nodded, waving her hands toward the half-buried vehicle. "Yeah. Navigation failed, systems down. And you?" "Same," Lyra replied. Her voice was steady but faintly strained. "My transport flipped in the drift a few miles back. I've been trying to get to the base on foot, but the storm caught me." Arya surveyed the swirling white around them. "We'll need shelter," she said quickly. "We can't survive this storm out here." Together they trudged through the deep snow, struggling with every step. The cold was relentless, seeping into their bones. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The world around them became a white void. Each gust of wind carried with it an icy sting that made breathing difficult, but neither of them faltered. They were human, and humans adapted. Finally, after what felt like hours, they spotted a faint glow in the distance. It was crude, barely noticeable, but it was enough. A small research cabin stood against the blizzard, its walls reinforced against the planet's extreme weather. Arya and Lyra stumbled toward it, each step a victory against the storm. Inside, the cabin was small but functional. The walls were lined with storage compartments, and a central heating unit hummed quietly, providing the first real warmth they had felt in hours. Arya collapsed onto one of the bunks, shivering uncontrollably. "You're freezing," Lyra said, helping Arya remove some of the outer layers. She activated the heater fully, sending waves of warm air into the room. "We need to get your core temperature back up. Hypothermia can set in fast in these conditions." Arya nodded, too exhausted to speak. She wrapped herself in the thermal blanket Lyra handed her, finally feeling some relief from the relentless cold. After a few moments of silence, Lyra broke the quiet. "You know," she said, her voice quieter now, "we could be stuck here for a while. The storm isn't letting up anytime soon." Arya looked at her, realization dawning. "You mean we might have to wait it out here together?" Lyra gave a small, wry smile. "It's not ideal, but it's better than freezing outside." The cabin's warmth began to work its magic. Arya felt the tension in her muscles ease slightly, replaced by a cautious sense of safety. They set to work inspecting the cabin's systems, checking for food, water, and communications. The supplies were limited, enough for a few days, perhaps, but it would have to do. As they worked, the storm raged outside, a constant reminder of the danger they faced. But in the small cabin, the two humans represented hope, resilience, and adaptability. Every challenge was an opportunity to demonstrate what humanity could endure and overcome. Arya glanced at Lyra, noting the determination in her eyes. "We'll get through this," she said softly. "We're humans. We survive." Lyra nodded, a spark of humor in her eyes despite the situation. "Humans, stubborn, resourceful, and maybe a little crazy. Yeah, we'll get through it." The two women settled into a routine, rationing food, tending to minor injuries, and keeping the cabin systems running. Outside, the storm continued to howl, but inside, humanity's ingenuity shone. They patched small cracks in the walls, reinforced the windows, and set up a basic communication array, hoping against hope for a signal. Hours passed. The storm showed no sign of weakening. They took turns keeping watch, scanning the white void for any signs of other travelers or rescue. Each time a shadow passed the window or a gust of wind rattled the cabin, their hearts jumped. But they never wavered. As night fell, the temperature dropped further, but the cabin's heat held. They shared stories of previous missions, laughed at minor mishaps, and slowly, an unspoken camaraderie formed. In the face of adversity, humans connected. That connection, that refusal to give up, was part of what made them strong. Arya thought about the mission they had left behind, the supplies waiting at Tarsus base, and the lives that depended on their success. Fear was there, of course, but so was determination. The human spirit, she realized, was never truly broken, not even by storms like this. Finally, exhausted but safe for the moment, they settled down to rest. The storm raged on outside, a reminder of the harsh world they had chosen to explore. But inside, in the warmth of the cabin, two humans endured. Together. And as they drifted into a fitful sleep, Arya felt a quiet certainty. Whatever the storm brought tomorrow, whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would survive. Because humans adapted, humans persevered, and humans never gave up. Morning arrived slowly on the frozen horizon. Though morning hardly seemed like the right word. The storm had softened slightly, reducing visibility just enough to see shadows beyond the cabin walls. But the wind still whipped across the icy plains with relentless force. Captain Arya Venn woke to the cold, seeping back into her bones, despite the cabin's heater. Her blanket felt damp with condensation, and the frost on the windows glimmered like tiny crystals, catching the faint glow of the emergency lights inside. Lyra Soren was already awake, kneeling by the communication console, her gloved fingers adjusting cables and circuits. The faint hum of machinery was the only sound inside the cabin, other than the occasional groan of the structure under the storm's pressure. "Morning," Arya said, her voice rough from sleep. "How's the communication system?" "Still dead," Lyra replied without looking up. "Satellite link is jammed by the storm. Planetary interference is too strong. We're on our own for now." Arya sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Well, at least we survived the night." Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes, that's something humans do well. Survive." The small victory did not mask the danger outside. They had limited food, a fragile heat source, and no way to call for help. Every hour spent waiting meant their supplies dwindled. Arya glanced at the storage compartments. There were enough protein packs and water rations for maybe 3 days, if they rationed strictly. Beyond that, survival would depend on ingenuity, careful planning, and luck. "We need a plan," Arya said. "We can't just wait for the storm to end. We should check the terrain and see if it's possible to reach Tarsus base on foot, or at least scout for safer ground." Lyra nodded. Agreed. But we have to be careful. Frostbite sets in fast, and exhaustion can be deadly. We'll need to travel in short bursts and stay close to shelter if the storm worsens. They spent the next hour preparing. Layers of clothing were checked and reinforced. Energy packs were stashed in waterproof containers. A basic emergency beacon was mounted outside. The small cabin became a hub of strategic planning. Every adjustment, every calculation reminded them of the human trait that had carried civilization across planets: foresight. Finally, the storm allowed them a brief window to step outside. The wind was slightly weaker, though still ferocious, and the snow crunched under their boots as they stepped into the blinding white world. The horizon was almost invisible, a seamless blend of gray and white, and the cold cut through their protective layers like knives. They moved carefully, each step deliberate. Visibility was limited to a few meters, and the terrain was treacherous. Ice sheets hidden beneath fresh snow threatened sudden slips, and jagged rock formations punctuated the otherwise smooth plains. Yet, despite the danger, neither Arya nor Lyra faltered. Humans, they realized, could endure far more than the universe seemed willing to throw at them. Hours passed as they struggled forward. Their movements were slow, methodical, designed to conserve energy while making progress. They marked their trail with small, reflective markers, ensuring they could find their way back if necessary. Even the simplest human ingenuity, marking a path, rationing energy, made a profound difference against nature's fury. During a brief pause, Arya spotted something in the distance, a faint structure barely visible through the snow. She pointed. "Look there. That might be another shelter. Maybe an old observation post or a supply depot." Lyra squinted, adjusting her goggles. "It's far, but it could be our best chance. If it's intact, we might find extra food, equipment, or even a working comm station." They adjusted their route, heading toward the faint outline. The storm threatened to worsen again at any moment, so they moved quickly, though cautiously. Every gust of wind challenged them, every icy slope demanded balance, and every step was a small triumph against the harshness of the planet. Hours later, they reached the structure. It was half buried in snow, its exterior battered by countless storms, but the doorway remained open. Inside, the air was dry and surprisingly warm, preserved by a small but functioning internal heating unit. Crates lined the walls, some containing rations, others filled with emergency equipment left by previous expeditions. "This is a jackpot," Arya said, her voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "Look at all this." Lyra immediately began inspecting the crates. Food, water, medical kits, even some emergency power cells. We could survive here for a week if we ration carefully. They worked quickly, transferring supplies back to the cabin in small, manageable loads. The storm outside worsened again, snow whipping past the doorway in a violent blur, but inside they felt a growing sense of hope. Survival, they realized, wasn't just about weathering the storm. It was about using every resource, every skill, every bit of human ingenuity to turn desperation into opportunity. As night approached, they returned to the cabin, exhausted, but triumphant. For the first time, they had more than just survival. They had preparation. They fortified the cabin further, distributing the extra supplies and reinforcing the walls against the storm. Even small gestures, blocking gaps with crates, reinforcing doors, made a huge difference in the icy world outside. During a brief rest, Arya and Lyra shared stories about past expeditions. Each tale highlighted human courage, adaptability, and determination. A minor accident during a supply run turned into a lesson about improvisation. A near-fatal miscalculation became an example of teamwork. They laughed softly, the sound carrying warmly through the small space, an unmistakable reminder that humans did not just survive, they endured, bonded, and thrived under pressure. Midnight brought another challenge. The emergency beacon outside the cabin began to flicker violently, signaling interference. Arya rushed to investigate, and Lyra followed. The signal was weak, barely penetrating the storm, but it was enough to detect something unusual. A faint reading appeared on the portable sensor, a heat signature moving in the distance. Someone, or something, is out there, Lyra whispered. We're not alone. Arya's heart raced, but her mind worked steadily. They had survived the storm, navigated treacherous terrain, and found shelter. Now they would face this unknown together. Humans, after all, were not cowed by fear. They faced it, measured it, and overcame it. For the next hour, they monitored the signal. It was irregular, sometimes fading, sometimes intensifying. Whatever it was moving closer to their location. They prepared cautiously, moving crates and equipment to form a makeshift barricade. They armed themselves with non-lethal tools, thermal nets, signal disruptors, and light flares to defend the cabin if necessary. Finally, the silhouette appeared outside the frosted window. It was humanoid, covered in thick layers, moving carefully against the wind. Arya signaled to Lyra, who nodded. Together they opened the door cautiously. The stranger stumbled inside, shaking and exhausted, but alive. They were a field scientist from Tarsus Base, lost during the storm. Relief washed over everyone, tempered by the knowledge that danger had not passed. The storm still raged outside, and survival required constant vigilance. Arya and Lyra helped the newcomer settle, sharing food, warmth, and dry clothing. Their teamwork had expanded, and their human ingenuity had created a safe haven in the frozen expanse. For the first time, they truly understood that survival was never solitary. Humans thrived together, relying on courage, creativity, and cooperation. As they sat near the heater, exhausted but alive, Arya reflected on the day. The storm had tested them, but humans had adapted. They had survived against harsh odds, turned challenges into opportunities, and found strength in unity. The cold, the isolation, the unknown, all were obstacles, yes, but obstacles humans were made to overcome. Outside, the storm howled like a living thing, relentless and unforgiving. Inside, 3 humans rested, strengthened by resourcefulness, determination, and the unyielding human spirit. Whatever the storm brought tomorrow, they were ready. Because humans endured, humans adapted, humans survived. The storm showed no mercy. Outside the small cabin, snow whipped in thick curtains, and the wind howled with a force that seemed determined to erase every trace of life. Inside, the 3 survivors, Arya, Lyra, and the field scientist, Darren, huddled near the heater, each wrapped in layers of thermal blankets. Their breaths rose in small clouds, fogging the air, but they were alive, for now. Morning brought no relief. The storm had intensified overnight, piling snow into walls and drifts that pressed against the cabin. The temperature dropped further, despite the heater running at full capacity. Arya checked the instruments again. The power cells were holding, but they were draining faster than anticipated. We need to conserve energy, Arya said firmly. Every device we use drains the cells. That includes the heater if it gets too high. Lyra nodded, scanning the cabin's inventory. We can rotate warmth. 2 near the heater while 1 rests farther away. It will reduce energy consumption, and we'll all stay conscious. Darren shivered, but agreed silently. They quickly organized themselves into shifts, moving methodically and efficiently, a human solution to an inhuman problem. The hours stretched endlessly. They rationed food carefully, eating just enough to maintain energy. Outside, the storm roared like an untamed beast, shaking the cabin with its ferocity. But humans were persistent. They patrolled the structure for weaknesses, checked the walls for cracks, and shored up gaps with crates, boards, and spare insulation. Each small improvement was a victory against the storm, a demonstration of human determination. By mid-afternoon, the situation outside demanded action. The cabin, while sturdy, was not invincible. Snow was piling higher, creating a risk of blocking the doors completely. They needed to clear a path to maintain an emergency exit. Bundled in layers, they stepped into the blizzard. The cold struck instantly, numbing fingers and cheeks within minutes. They used compact shovels and tools salvaged from the observation post to dig a clear path. Each movement was a battle against exhaustion and frostbite, but they persevered. Humans, Arya thought, never stopped fighting, even when nature seemed unbeatable. While digging, Arya noticed the snow shifting in a peculiar way. Small mounds collapsed under the wind, revealing smooth surfaces beneath. She approached one cautiously. "Look at this," she said. "The storm might be hiding something. Maybe ice formations or minerals?" Lyra came over, examining the patterns. "It could be natural, but it's worth investigating. If it's ice with mineral deposits, we might be able to melt it for water. Our supplies are limited." Darren, catching his breath, added, "And if we can find pockets of ice, we could also create emergency caches of water for the long haul. Humans adapt, right? We turn obstacles into resources." Together they worked quickly, breaking the ice into manageable chunks and carrying them back to the cabin. Inside, they set up a small melting station, using portable heaters and metal containers. Water dripped slowly, but every drop was precious. They had extended their survival window, proving again that humans could thrive even when the environment seemed impossible. The day wore on. Exhaustion weighed heavily on them, but morale remained high. They shared small moments of humor, teasing each other about slipping on ice or getting snow in boots. Laughter, Arya realized, was another human tool for survival. It reminded them that they were alive, connected, and capable of handling adversity. Evening brought a new challenge. A sudden gust rattled the cabin violently. Arya ran to the window and saw it. The roof was beginning to accumulate heavy snow, bending under the weight. If it collapsed, they could be trapped, or worse. "We need to clear the roof," Arya said immediately. "It's risky, but if we don't, the structure could fail." Lyra hesitated. "The wind is brutal. We could get swept away, but if we don't..." "You're right. It has to be done." They quickly fashioned safety lines from spare cords and equipment. Step by step, they climbed to the roof, each movement deliberate and coordinated. Snow slid around them, threatening to pull them off balance. But they pressed on. Arya directed Darren to shovel the snow carefully, while she and Lyra reinforced weak spots in the roof with spare boards. It was exhausting work, but they completed the task. The roof was cleared, the cabin safe once more, and the storm continued its relentless assault outside. Inside, their hands were raw, faces frozen, but their spirits remained unbroken. Humans adapted. Humans persevered. That night, after another short rest, the three huddled near the heater. Darren, quietly examining the communication console again, sighed. "Still nothing. We're isolated." "The storm is too strong for any signals to penetrate." Arya nodded. "Then we need to plan for longer-term survival. The storm might last for days, maybe a week. We have to be ready." Lyra spoke up, her voice firm. "We can survive as long as we ration, maintain the cabin, and find creative solutions for food, water, and energy. We've done it before, just in small ways. Now we scale it." Together, they sketched a plan. They would rotate tasks, clearing snow, melting ice, checking supplies, and maintaining the heater. They would continue monitoring the faint sensor readings for signs of other humans or potential threats. Every day would be a test, but humans thrived on challenge. Hours later, Darren spoke again. "I detected movement outside. Something, or someone, is trying to make it through the storm." "Could be a rescue team, or another lost traveler." Arya's pulse quickened. "We'll prepare. If it's someone in need, we help. If it's a threat, well, We use every tool and every ounce of human ingenuity to protect ourselves. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside, 3 humans were alive, alert, and planning. They understood that survival was more than endurance. It was anticipation, creativity, and courage. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the cabin. Snow had fallen from the roof in a heavy sheet blocking one of the windows. Arya, Lyra, and Darren reacted immediately, moving quickly to clear the debris. The cold air rushed in as they worked, but they didn't falter. Every obstacle was a chance to prove human resourcefulness. By dawn, they had cleared the window and reinforced it against further collapse. Their clothes were soaked with melted snow, hands raw, and faces wind-burned. Yet they felt a sense of accomplishment. They had survived the night, adapted, and strengthened their defenses. That morning, Arya took a long look outside. The storm was still raging, but she could see faint tracks in the snow leading toward the cabin. Footprints, too deep to be from animals. Another human, or group of humans, was making their way through the blizzard. She called Lyra and Darren over. "Look at this. Someone is coming. We might not be alone anymore." Lyra nodded, a spark of hope lighting her eyes. Finally, reinforcements, or at least someone to share the burden with. Humans survive better together. Darren smiled despite the cold. Exactly. Humans adapt, humans endure, and humans always find a way to persevere. For the first time in days, they allowed themselves a small smile. Survival was no longer just about shelter, food, or warmth. It was about connection, about courage, about proving that, no matter how harsh the storm, humanity would not yield. And as the distant figures drew closer, Arya felt an unshakable certainty. Whatever the storm had in store for them next, they were ready. Because humans adapted, humans persevered, and humans always found a way. Outside, the blizzard continued to howl. Inside, 3 humans prepared to welcome whoever, or whatever, was coming. Their warmth, ingenuity, and determination were a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. Humans survived. Humans endured. Humans thrived. The storm had reached its fiercest point. Outside, the wind tore across the frozen landscape with relentless fury, carrying snow in blinding sheets that reduced visibility to almost zero. The cabin groaned under the pressure of snow piled high against its walls, and every gust rattled the windows like a hammer striking steel. Inside, Arya, Lyra, and Darren worked tirelessly, maintaining the fragile refuge that had kept them alive for days. Sleep had become a luxury. Each hour was a battle against exhaustion, hunger, and the ever-present cold. The heater, powered by the remaining energy cells, kept the temperature just above freezing, but the chill still seeped into their bones. Every movement required effort. Every breath was a reminder that survival demanded constant vigilance. Arya paced near the cabin's entrance, studying the frozen landscape through a frosted window. "We can't just wait this out anymore," she said, her voice firm. "The storm isn't letting up. We need a plan to secure long-term survival, and fast." Lyra nodded, her breath fogging in the cold air. "We've done well so far, but our supplies are limited, and the roof is already under stress. We need to reinforce the structure and find a steady water source." Darren rubbed his sore hands. "The melted ice has given us some water, but not enough for long. If the storm lasts another 2 days, we'll be in trouble." Arya's eyes narrowed. "Then we improvise. Humans adapt, remember? We'll find a way to make this work." Their plan was simple but demanding. They would dig channels to redirect snow away from the cabin, preventing further pressure on the roof. They would set up an insulated melting station outside, using sunlight reflective panels to maximize heat from even the faint light that filtered through the storm, and they would ration their remaining food and water to last as long as possible, supplementing it with melted snow when necessary. Working outside was brutal. Each step through the thick snow required enormous effort, and the wind threatened to sweep them off their feet at every turn. They dug trenches around the cabin, piling snow strategically to form protective barriers against the strongest gusts. Every movement was calculated, every shove of snow a testament to human determination. "Careful!" Lyra shouted as a sudden gust nearly knocked Darren off balance. He grabbed the edge of the cabin, heart pounding. This storm is worse than anything I've ever experienced. Arya adjusted her scarf and nodded. Exactly why humans survive. We take what nature throws at us and turn it to our advantage, one step at a time. Hours passed as they labored in the blizzard. Exhaustion was constant, but they took brief moments to check on the cabin's interior, ensuring the heater and power cells were holding. Each successful inspection was a small victory, a reminder that humans were capable of clever problem-solving even under extreme stress. By late afternoon, the wind eased slightly, enough to allow them to complete their work on the snow channels. The cabin was now better protected, and the trenches directed melting snow away from the structure. The improvised melting station collected enough water to supplement their rations. For the first time in days, they felt a cautious sense of security. But the storm was not finished. As evening fell, a new danger emerged. The cabin's roof began to creak under an unexpected weight of ice and snow. Each groan of the structure sent a shiver through their bodies, not just from the cold, but from the knowledge that a collapse could trap them inside or worse. "We have to clear the roof again," Arya said firmly. "We can't risk it falling in the middle of the night." Lyra nodded, already pulling on extra layers. "We'll have to work together carefully. No mistakes." Using the safety lines they had set up earlier, the three climbed onto the roof. Snow shifted dangerously with every movement, and the wind threatened to knock them off. But humans were adaptable. They coordinated every step, communicating clearly and working in perfect rhythm. Darren shoveled snow to one side while Arya and Lyra reinforced the roof with spare boards and insulation. The work was exhausting, but they completed it. The cabin was safe for now, its roof cleared and reinforced. Each of them collapsed onto the snow-covered roof for a brief rest, breathing heavily but triumphant. Even in the harshest conditions, humans could endure when they relied on skill, teamwork, and determination. Back inside, they reviewed their supplies and plans. Food was nearly half gone, water was limited, and the power cells were draining faster than expected. They needed to stretch every resource, and they needed to prepare for the possibility that the storm could last longer than anticipated. Darren spoke up, pointing to the sensor readings. "I'm picking up another heat signature outside. Someone is coming. It could be a rescue team or another lost traveler." Arya's pulse quickened. "We need to be ready. Humans survive better together, but we also have to protect ourselves if it's something unexpected." They prepared a small defense perimeter, not weapons, but tools to signal, distract, or guide anyone approaching. Flares were set, and reflective panels positioned to direct light in the storm. Every precaution was a demonstration of human foresight and ingenuity. Hours passed. The storm began to abate slightly, revealing faint shapes moving through the snow. Arya, Lyra, and Darren watched through frost-covered windows, hearts pounding with anticipation. Finally, the figures reached the cabin. Humans. 2 explorers, battered by the storm but alive. Relief washed over the 3 survivors. They opened the door, helping the newcomers inside. The cabin suddenly felt fuller, warmer, not just from bodies, but from the human connection that made survival possible. The newcomers brought news. Tarsus Base had lost communication with their transport units, and several teams had been forced to shelter wherever they could. The storm was widespread, affecting multiple sectors. But they also brought hope, a plan for coordinated rescue once conditions improved. Arya nodded. "We've survived the worst. Now we prepare for the next stage. reaching the base safely once the storm allows. Even as exhaustion threatened to overtake them, the humans worked together, pooling knowledge, energy, and supplies. They reinforced the cabin further, shared rations, and prepared for a long wait. Night came again, colder than before. Outside, the wind howled like a living creature, but inside, humans endured. They monitored the faint sensor readings for any additional signs of movement. Each blizzard gust reminded them that the universe could be harsh, but humans, resilient, inventive, determined, always found a way to survive. Arya looked around at her companions, each weary but alert. "We've done well," she said quietly. "But the storm isn't over. We need to keep thinking, keep adapting. Humans survive by using their minds as much as their strength." Lyra smiled faintly. "And by working together. Alone we might have frozen in place, but together we endure." Darren added, "Humans adapt, humans survive, and humans never stop finding solutions, no matter how impossible the world seems." They settled near the heater, exhausted but alive. The storm would continue, but the cabin, though battered and surrounded by snow, stood as a testament to human ingenuity. Every plank reinforced, every channel dug, every ration calculated was proof that humans could not just survive, they could thrive under the most extreme conditions. And as the night stretched on, Arya reflected on the journey. Every challenge, every gust of wind, every drop of melted water had been a test of human resilience. And humans, she realized, never failed when they combined courage, creativity, and cooperation. Outside, the storm raged, indifferent and unforgiving. Inside, 6 humans were alive, warm, and united by the unshakable human spirit. Whatever the storm brought next, they were ready. Because humans adapt. Humans endure. Humans thrive. Morning arrived with a faint hint of sunlight, though the storm had not yet fully surrendered. The snow still swirled in the wind, but the gusts had weakened, allowing the horizon to emerge from the white haze. For the first time in days, Arya, Lyra, Darren, and the 2 newcomers could see the frozen landscape around them. The blizzard had tested their endurance, ingenuity, and teamwork, but the end of the ordeal was finally within reach. Arya pressed her face to the frosted window, scanning the terrain. She could see faint traces of other survivors making their way through the snow toward them. Relief and determination surged through her. "The storm is letting up," she said. "We can make it to Tarsus Base if we move carefully. But we have to stay smart. No rushing, no mistakes." Lyra nodded. "We've survived every challenge so far. We just have to use our minds and work together like we always have." Darren added, "And remember, every step counts." This terrain is still dangerous, but humans endure when they face challenges like this head-on. They began preparations immediately. Snow channels were checked and reinforced, supplies were consolidated, and everyone donned their thickest layers. The cabin, which had been their fortress, now became a base for the final leg of their journey. The survivors were tired, their muscles aching from days of labor, but they moved with focus. Arya led the group outside first, testing the snow for hidden ice patches. Each step was careful, deliberate, as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Even with the storm easing, the planet remained unforgiving. Snow drifts were deep, and occasional ice sheets threatened sudden slips. But humans, she reminded herself, had always overcome such obstacles through observation, creativity, and sheer determination. As they moved, they spotted remnants of the storm's fury, broken panels, scattered debris, and drifted snow that had swallowed smaller structures. But they also saw small signs of life, footprints, broken branches used as markers, and faint smoke rising from distant shelters. Humanity's presence was scattered across the landscape, a testament to their perseverance and adaptability. Hours passed as they advanced cautiously. They rationed water and food meticulously, taking turns breaking trail through deep snow and scouting for hazards. Every decision, every step, reflected human ingenuity, using teamwork to share the burden, improvising pathways, and maintaining constant vigilance. Around midday, a faint but recognizable landmark appeared, the communications tower of Tarsus Base. Relief washed over the group. The base had survived the storm, though the approach would still be treacherous. "Almost there," Arya whispered. "We've made it this far, and humans don't give up. Not now." Lyra smiled despite the cold and exhaustion. "It's been a long journey, but this is why humans endure. Every obstacle is an opportunity to show what we're capable of." The final stretch was the most dangerous. Snowdrifts rose higher, and wind gusts still threatened their balance. But they pressed on, supporting one another. Whenever someone stumbled, another helped them back up. Every moment highlighted the HFY spirit, resilience, cooperation, and unyielding determination. Suddenly, a small avalanche shifted from a nearby ridge, sending snow tumbling dangerously close to their path. Arya reacted immediately, shouting a warning and directing the group to take cover behind a rocky outcrop. Together, they hunkered down, bracing against the snow and wind. When the avalanche passed, they assessed their surroundings. Everyone was safe, though a few snowflakes had melted into their clothing. "See?" Arya said with a tired grin. "Humans survive because we think, adapt, and act fast. That was dangerous, but we handled it." Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the outer perimeter of Tarsus Base. The familiar structures, domed buildings and reinforced walls, were partially buried but intact. Engineers and base personnel emerged, shouting greetings and extending hands to help them inside. Relief and exhaustion mingled as the survivors crossed the threshold into warmth and safety. Inside, the heater roared, and the ambient temperature felt luxurious after days in the storm. Arya, Lyra, and Darren removed layers of wet clothing, shivering at first, but gradually warming. The newcomers were similarly attended to, and supplies were distributed generously. Though everyone was exhausted, the sense of accomplishment and survival was palpable. Commander Elan, the base's leader, approached the group. "I heard about the storm and the stranded teams. I knew humans like you would find a way. Welcome back. You've proven what we've always known. Humanity endures against all odds." Arya nodded. "It wasn't easy, but humans survive. We adapt, we solve problems, and we work together." Elan smiled. "Exactly. You've done more than survive. You've shown every human trait that matters in situations like this: ingenuity, courage, and teamwork." As the storm finally began to fade completely outside, the survivors shared a meal in the base's dining hall. The food was simple but nourishing, a stark contrast to the rations they had relied on. Conversation flowed easily. They spoke of challenges faced during the storm, creative solutions that had kept them alive, and the moments when teamwork had made the difference between life and death. Laughter echoed through the hall, a sound that had been absent for days, and hope filled the room. Arya looked around at her companions, seeing exhaustion, relief, and pride reflected in their faces. Humanity had triumphed, not through luck, not through divine intervention, but through their own resilience, intelligence, and cooperation. Every step, every decision, every ounce of effort had mattered. Humans had survived. Humans had endured. Humans had thrived. Outside, the snow melted slightly under the emerging sunlight. The frozen landscape was still harsh, but the blizzard had passed. The horizon stretched wide and open, a reminder that humans had conquered not only the storm, but also the isolation and danger of an unforgiving planet. Lyra raised her cup of warm water in a silent toast. "To humans," she said, "for surviving, for thinking, for never giving up. Arya and Darren echoed the sentiment. To humans, they said, voices full of conviction, the base's communication systems were restored, allowing the stranded teams scattered across the storm's path to coordinate safely. Rescue efforts began, guided by the ingenuity and experience of those who had survived the worst. Arya reflected on the journey as she watched teams venture into the thawing snow to retrieve supplies and aid others. The storm had been relentless, but humanity had proved stronger. Humans had endured where machines, transport systems, and even extreme environmental conditions had faltered. Humans had adapted, and in that moment, Arya understood the full scope of HFY. Survival was not just a matter of enduring cold or storm, it was about courage, creativity, and the refusal to give in. Every obstacle had been a challenge, and every challenge had been an opportunity to showcase what humans were capable of. As the last teams returned to Tarsus Base safely, Arya, Lyra, and Darren stood on the perimeter, watching the sun reflect off the snow. The frozen plains stretched endlessly before them, no longer an enemy, but a testament to human resilience. The blizzard had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and forced them to innovate. And through it all, humans had survived. Elon approached them, his expression proud. You've set an example for everyone here. The storm may have been brutal, but your actions show what humans are capable of. Intelligence, adaptability, courage, and teamwork. They are the tools that keep us alive, no matter what the universe throws at us. Arya smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. We survived together, she said, and that's the most important part. Humans survive because we think, we plan, and we never give up. That's what makes us strong. The sun rose higher, melting the last traces of the blizzard. The air was crisp, the snow glinting like glass. For the survivors, it was more than the end of a storm. It was proof of humanity's enduring spirit. No machine, no storm, no isolation could break what humans had built inside themselves: resilience, courage, and an unshakable will to live. And as Arya, Lyra, Darren, and the others watched the horizon, they knew this was only one of many challenges humanity would face. But if they had survived this storm, they could survive anything. Humans had endured, humans had adapted, and humans, undaunted, creative, and unyielding, would always thrive, because humans were unstoppable.